Alright, hello everyone, welcome back to Crypto Warehouse. My name's Brogan, obviously, and today we are back for another chart stream. Now, no one's very happy, okay? No one's happy. Everyone's very sad today. And not just today, over the last however long it's been. It's not very positive. So, last time we talked, we were kind of at a turning point for pretty much everything. It was either we printed lower on the weekly, and if we did so, which was the most likely chance of happening. Obviously, last stream we talked about it. It was going to proceed to continue to do what we're doing. Yeah, continue going downwards, and we have done just that. We have done just that. Obviously, today's liquidations not too bad. Before I talk any longer, though, let me start the timer and say hello to everyone. Obviously, thank you all for joining the stream. Hello to everyone on YouTube. Hello to everyone on Binance Square. Hopefully, you're all doing well. As much as well could be right now, obviously, as things have continued to take, well, not take any turn, because it's continued to continue the same turn it's been taking for a long time now. Yes, we are collecting lamps in an hour. I'm not staying for any longer than an hour. I do need to leave to collect a lamp. That's not an excuse. I need to collect a lamp. Okay. But hello to everybody, nonetheless. So, like I said, 24 hours, pretty fine actually. Of all things considered, anyway. About 376 million. I'm pretty sure there's like yeah, here we go. So obviously we can see the day by day. So obviously we had 31st of January. We had quite a bit of long over the past. I mean, we've already talked about this as it was happening anyway. But just showing the events. I suppose you could say, which we've had. Obviously, we had one as of late anyway. It's pretty much been 31st of January, 5th February. A lot of money, a lot of value lost in those 2 days, basically. I mean, again, it was within like a week, basically, which was crazy. But yeah, so safe to say, not a lot of people who have been trading long have expected this. Because again, there's so much value. I mean, this is comparable to some crazy times. This is other things. Yeah, I'm just actually I didn't know they had this. This is interesting. They have the top liquidation events of all time. That's actually very cool. That's actually really, really cool. Anyway, so that's the liquidation events, whatever, done, talked about. Not too much today anyway, and obviously we've talked about it as it's been happening, and there's been a lot of events which have happened, which have been very, very large. Anyways, in terms of actual data, what we have coming up, we have stuff on February, we have NFP and unemployment rate data. We have obviously the previous, we have the forecast and whatnot. So that is expected to get worse, from what I can tell anyway. Obviously, unemployment going up doesn't sound like a very good thing, and less money being paid out on average for non-farm getting lower is probably also not a very good thing either. Anyways, other than that, we have inflation, I suppose, on the 13th, but other than we don't really have much else. I mean, we have stuff. It says 3-star impact, but I only care about inflation. You know, obviously NFP data and some price index-based data. I mean, that's pretty much it, really. I mean, anything outside of America, I swear, doesn't really do anything. Apart from maybe like a Japan thing. Obviously, when Asia opens. But, you know, other than that, I don't personally look at anything, really. In terms of the price, though, as we've moved on to CoinMarketCap, we can see where we are right now at 69,462. About 2.3% down, 24-hour, 11.7% down on the 7-day. Ethereum, 13% down on the 7-day, 2.6 on the 24-hour, and Solana is at 2.8. So, respective from Ethereum and Solana, we're about $2,000-ish for Ethereum and about $85 for Solana. Again, both of them having a very, very, I mean, everything across the board having a horrible number on the 7-day. Again, obviously 11%, I should say. 12% for Bitcoin, 13 and 18 for Ethereum and Solana. Very, very sad times. In terms of syrup, how are we doing? I'm glad it's still going down. Okay. I think Mike was saying 27. I'm not convinced. I'm still sticking my guns to 22. We're getting there. We nearly got there. We're getting there. Okay. We got very, very close to that 22. I think it's about within 22. It's within these two areas back here, basically. Yeah. So it's about here. So it's this kind of line here, about 22-ish cent. It's kind of where I really want to be focusing syrup at. In terms of the low, I think. Personally, obviously, not financial advice. Very prudent times to be mentioning that as well. This is not financial advice. Again, I'm not professional. get things wrong, get things right. You know what I mean? It's just, it's just a way, the ebbs and flows. You know what I mean? I'm just here. I'm a bystander. Okay, I just look at it, I give my opinion, and then we move on. Okay, it's not I'm not a professional. So finally, after all the talking I have done so far, we can then move to the charts. So we have Bitcoin here. Big flashbang there, obviously, for the light mode. I think it's better than it was, though. I think it's better. I can see it. That's an ugly-looking sidebar. Hold on, let me shimmy that. There we go, perfect. Now it looks all prim and proper now. So firstly up, we have Bitcoin. Here we have it on the daily here. So the last time I talked probably was about last week time-ish, coming into this period. Probably, I believe, on Thursday as well, as we were talking about this print past this candle here. I think that was the kind of the main topic. Whichever stream exactly I mentioned it most in, we still had that weekly low here at 74. Basically, a very simple term, or very simple idea. Okay, if we continue to print even lower, number one, as we've already done past this low, which was another concerning movement, which was fully actually printing past the semi-major low which we produced within the 17th of November week here, about a low about 80,624. Obviously, went back up, held onto this support for quite a few weeks until we hit into this weekly resistance here, and then we've just done the market. The main thing, though, from last stream was really looking at, if we do print past 74.5, this isn't a great sign. This isn't a very positive scenario to be looking at. But then obviously moving on now, we have continued to go downwards, and obviously so behold the candle of doom, the 2nd of February. During this week, obviously having this green line, which is the low of this kind of whole move we had, starting from about 7th of April 2025, going up all the way towards our highs, where we eventually hit to XYZ, and then finally all the way come back down to our lows. So going back to the daily here, we can see kind of the ranges we've had. Now, I had a grey box highlighted here, which I don't have up anymore because I have it on the screen. You can't see it because it's a mess, and I don't expect anyone to look at these horrible lines, which I have re-added to my charts. So we have the line. It's this line, it's this middle, and it's this kind of range here, which obviously we've talked about previously. What I mainly was focusing on last stream in terms of this range was holding on to this area, and the idea that we failed this. We consistently printed lower. We used its support here, 21st of January, came up to the top end here, 23rd, came to the bottom end of it, 25th, tried to come up one more time on the 28th, and failed to print, which obviously the important aspect there. Then finally printed through the low of this kind of mid-range area on the 30th of January, continued to print lower through it, and obviously finally hitting on the 31st of January, printing through the entire equilibrium, and kind of showing the idea that, okay, cool, we are going to continue this downtrend. The next target is either going to be, it's either the high, the mid, or the low. So it's either the 117, it's the midline 188k, or it's towards 58k. So we got to about 60k. We didn't quite hit the 59k. I believe, about 59.50 is this line. So about 59k. We hit about 60k, so about $1,000 off here. So obviously this is actually an important aspect here for this, and I'm going to draw this out on the weekly as something to focus on, which is let's make it blue. I normally make it blue. I'm going to make this a lesser opacity so we just can see a bit more. I think that's a bit nicer. There we go. So this is going to be a support area in theory. Obviously we're kind of slowing down, and I will show this in a bit more detail on the lower time frame. So we have come into what we have needed to come into for a support. So what I have drawn out here, I believe on the 1 hour, actually. I should probably just do 1 hour. If we wait for it to load, there we go. So we have, it's getting better on the lower time frames. It's getting better. Obviously, it's not perfect. Do I think anything we're doing right on the 1 hour is going to cause us to go back up to 100k? No. But I have some long-term targets. I have some things, or I have some reasons in which I want us to go up a tiny bit more. Not 90k, not 95k. Limit at least 80k. So it's still a very large move upwards. Will we have slowed down by now? Are we slowing down? Well, we do have this massive grey area I have actually yet to talk about. Let me just hide everything on the screen. I guess the range will still stay, whatever. If I hide everything, you're not going to see everything. So I have an area I've previously marked out, which obviously we've used previously. Going to the midpoint about 52k, the high end being about 61.2. So this is an area we've kind of used in a previous kind of cycle or previous situation we've been in this area in this whole kind of period we had for a few months now. For a few months, obviously back in 2024, where we obviously came up. If I should probably expand the range so you can see it better, but I can't be bothered, and that's not the point I'm trying to make in this segment. But we have this previous area here, which we have kind of marked out. Which we have used previously. Obviously, you can see the amount of printed here. We came one more time downwards, obviously using the kind of this midpoint area. The main thing on the monthly here was filling this gap. I think I remember talking about this actually ages ago, like back in 2020, maybe going into 2025, 2024 time. I remember talking about this on the monthly with actually these same ranges, which is quite funny. But yeah, anyways, so we have this area. Just want to point out why that's there, why there's big old grey horror areas here. So obviously going to the weekly, we can still you see it in a bit more detail, and it being used here, obviously printing in and out of it, mainly on the monthly, but we can recognise it on the weekly here. So the high end, basically the line of a high end at 61,235 is something to bear in mind, basically. So we can see we came close to that previous support area, which we used all that time ago. Let's finally actually go back down to the 1 hour here and talk about what we have. So that's kind of the grey area. I just want to point that out quickly. So I'm gonna go back out one more time actually, because I do need to show off this purple area. So this is kind of it's not a resistance area, or it's not a okay, 80,779 is resistance. This isn't a low, mid, high kind of scenario. This is just a limit area. It could go up towards. I mean, I know to be fair, the midpoint is actually not 89, but I'm not saying we go to 89. Okay, I have my reasons. Mainly on the weekly here, I have my reasons. So it's kind of a range coming into this purple area, but basically coming from the low to the high. This range here is kind of the focus I want to have for the weekly. Again, this is drawn over the weekly. We have resistance on the weekly. I do want to look at in a second. I just want to quickly look at the 1 hour before we go to some higher time frames to show you kind of what we're doing right now before we look at some longer time frame stuff, and then we can move on to Ethereum. So going back to this, obviously we've just looked at that rejection block on the weekly, which is good, which is drawn on the higher range here. If we go to the 1 hour, we can see kind of the fight we're having in between what we have relative to the ranges we have drawn as well. So we've had this previous resistance area from the 1 hour in this little crevice we've had using this area twice, or not even twice, quite a few times now. But the most important part, we are starting to slowly print higher. Haven't quite gone through these highs yet, but we are kind of trying to get higher. Again, we haven't got anywhere near. We are still in a downtrend. You know, we're still going down. We haven't printed a new high in any regard. This isn't a cry of, oh, guys, really positive on the 1 hour. We're definitely going to go up to 78k towards the high. But again, remember what I said: the high, mid, and the low. You know, it's all just a process of coming in between these lines and in between these ranges. So either going from the high, printing through extension, going to the midpoint, things like this. Okay, this again, I haven't used these lines in a while, but it's nice to go try them again. Again, obviously in times of turmoil, why not? Why not? So again, the fight, as we just solved the weekly as well, in terms of when we looked at this support back here and we're in this equilibrium for a long period of time, using this area of support. Obviously we had it's not just a willy-nilly let's use these lines. Has to be somewhat of reasoning behind using the lines. It's actually got to have some price action behind it for me to actually look at it. Otherwise I'm not going to look at it because there's no real fundamental to it. But again, we have these ranges, we have these equilibriums. So same as we had back here on the weekly, which was about 89k, 88k, where the midpoint was, where we saw the process of it break down. I obviously highlighted it during the 31st of January, 28th of January. We saw the process of it slowly print lower and lower throughout the equilibrium before we printed outside the equilibrium and then use its resistance. So we have a process, Same thing on every range. Same thing on the 1 hour here. We have the process where, okay, we use it as support, we came down, tried to use support, came back up into resistance, came down, printed through the gap, used this bottom end of it as resistance, came down through here. Obviously, this was leading into a monthly support point, and we're at the low. So obviously, we found a great deal of support here before continuing back upwards. We didn't really see much difficulty out here. We kind of continued to print upwards, which was pretty strong, actually, for a pretty good idea of strength. Obviously coming to our resistance area one more time, here about 71.3, coming back down, kind of using this area of support below us. was a bit of resistance support, finally came upwards, and now we're kind of trying to use its support again. So again, not pinpoint one-to-one, but the idea that, okay, we've gone from printing through it quite strongly to coming back outside of it and using this area as a consistent area of support, which is a good sign. Obviously, the 1 hour relative to weekly is kind of, apples and oranges. The 1 hour is not going to have any hold on the weekly, which we're going to move on to in a second, obviously, because I do have some things to talk about on the weekly. But in terms of the 1 hour, it's not done any. It's not. I'm not saying it's positive in terms of we've not printed new highs. We haven't got out of a significant downtrend yet. But in terms of if any point was going to be a time where we could try and translate into a bit of a up move, it would be now, in my opinion. This green area, I should probably highlight this green area as well. This is also a support point down here. This obviously was resistance and support. Just want to highlight our two areas. We also are within our weekly support area here, which I'll segue into now, actually, if we go back to the weekly, or towards the daily at least. So highlighting this range higher, if it draws. So highlighting this range higher here. We can obviously talk about us coming into the rejection block area, drawing this out. Obviously, we have this green area which sits right exactly where the midpoint is, about 65. So this is a general area which could be considered a support. Obviously, not financial advice. This is obviously, this is still a test, I suppose. Well, not a test, but this is still an idea. But my main thing I want to talk about is going to be this purple area. This is something on a higher range, which I've just highlighted. This is my area. This is basically, this range equates to this. The low to here to the high to here. Now, this isn't a resistance area. The midpoint is the resistance area. This isn't a resistance area. It's a magical range. It's a magical fairy dust unicorn range, which I personally believe we want to at least come into. It's about 80,800. So at least above 80k, okay? Now, there's a glaring big old thing you might be able to see on your screen, which is this weekly gap. Now, importantly, this gap obviously printed through this low, which officially started us not only, again, this whole down move was a big down move. Technically, this candle on the 26th of January, this weekly candle, was what caused it into a downtrend. So I was saying this on the last stream, which was within this candle, obviously about Monday. I probably was Monday, actually, 2nd of Feb, which was we have printed through this low in last week's candle. This is now technically a downtrend. And obviously, I know we've already been in a downtrend. And like I said, and I always talk about, and people, you guys might watch other people, who do charts, and they probably might say the same thing. The price is one unit. Price, that you can't go to different time frames and see different prices. Price is one unified kind of system, right? But the time frame you look at it on is its own world, if you will. But the consistency of the 4 hour leading into the daily the 4 hour doesn't affect the daily because price is still one unit. Price is still one system which plays out. But the way in which you look at it, for example, it's an ideology. It's like, okay, if you see the 4 hour consistently do something over a longer period of time, you're going to see that translate into the daily, if you know what I mean, right? So it's the same thing on every other time frame. It's the same thing on the weekly relative to the daily, 4 hour, whatever. So we have been seeing us. We know we've been in a downtrend. We can clearly see it, obviously. Now, obviously, whether you consider this low to be, this is obviously, arguable. I was saying this at the time. Okay, cool. We have a low here, high. If we look at the actual highs and lows, high, low, high, fail high, still do a higher low here, and obviously another fail print higher, and then we print through this low at 107. And obviously, we had this print through. So we were already in a downtrend, but in terms of a very, very obvious low, in terms of we have a high to an obvious low to a high, printing low, we printed through this. So this is kind of another thing I was pointing out on my last stream, which was, okay, this weekly candle I think is very important. We've printed through this low. Coming into this week, which was obviously Monday, I was saying, okay, we've printed, if we continue to print, which is most likely, we were already at, my first target was 71k. I believe we had a lower range. I was talking about 71k. Okay, cool, we can get to at least 71k. We have somewhat what of a gap here. I think it was I think I was looking at the 1 hour. I think it was this area here. We had a gap behind us. Basically, I think we were just about I think we were somewhere. I think we must have been here. I was like, okay, cool. We have about 71k-ish, 72k. If we continue to do what we're doing on the Monday, and we continue to go down, or I expect us to go towards this 71k area, we will eventually print through this major low on the weekly, which is now Armageddon. So obviously we did that, obviously coming to the Tuesday as well, which translates to the daily. We eventually had a print through of this area, obviously on the weekly. Throughout the whole week, we obviously printed through it, which is now important for the long period. But relative to the daily 4 hour, in terms of what we're really doing, we had a print through. Oh, actually, on Wednesday, we had a print through, which was not a great sign. And regardless of if we print it through, we still continue downwards. And again, the negativity there, printing through that and whatnot, you can see we held on for quite a bit of time on the 4 hour. You know, we came towards the low, didn't quite get lower than it. We came towards that 72, 71. Actually, no, it's actually 72.5 to be fair. At this, 72.6. This is actually the area to be fair. So about 72.6. That low being about 72.9. I think the gap was, I don't know what time frame it was on actually. We had a gap a long time ago. Finally printing through it again. Like I said on Monday, printing through this low on the weekly is going to be hell, right? Obviously, we can see we continued this move down as we've kind of talked about Monday, eventually leading us down towards this 60k area, which is obviously within this low range, 59 to about 60,800. I know this is a very wide range, but you know, whatever. This obviously leads into the idea of a rejection block coming into this area here on the high, or this area here on the low, is where we see these rejection blocks. So the midpoint, the high end of it. So if we actually look at this here, I want to see it actually. So we can see we formed it here, and we've used it occasionally, here, but again, it's the weekly. I'm not expecting the 1 hour to be using the weekly too strong anyway. But anyways, that's the process we had. So again, printing through that low there. So the idea now is, okay, we've had this major low, we've printed through a major low. We probably would want to see somewhat of expansion, and again. Whether we have whatever system you trade, whatever idea you look at when you look at the charts, I think the idea is we've seen a mass amount of liquidations, and we will continue to see that. Again, we had a lot of buys. We had a lot of long, or just buy. I'll just say buy because it's kind of all the same thing. Technically, we had a lot of buy in this area, and then obviously we've come down. And this is obviously we've seen this mass amount of liquidation. So there's kind of key components in this price action, which is an idea. It's it's not, again, whether it be true or not, obviously not financial advice. It's an idea, which is obviously we've moved so fast, and this obviously we know this is true by the sheer amount of liquidations we've seen on the way downwards. We've moved down so fast past this period of long coming from this support, which obviously I agreed this was support. Until we printed past this low, this was a good area, and obviously we had this weekly resistance, which I did draw out, obviously about 98k. Did I expect it to be as much of a move down? Did I expect this mass fall? No. I think the sheer amount of long within such a tight area didn't help in terms of moving down past this period, obviously towards about 86 and lower 84. That obviously didn't help, and we've seen this again. This isn't a theory like, oh well, we had a lot of longs, we've liquidated them, which means we've kind of dumped down, because the more longs we liquidate, the more sell there is. The more sell there is, the more we go down. The more we go down, the more longs we liquidate. It's kind of a vicious cycle until it stops. But we've seen this with CoinGlass. We've been watching this on every stream, every intro. We look at the liquidations. We've seen obviously the periods of 2 billion long liquidation, 1.6 billion long liquidation. So we know this has been happening. This isn't some magical idea. But again, into these gap areas, the sheer velocity of our move downwards through a period of buy could yield the idea that, or could provide the idea that there is something within this area, 83k, which we could come back to for an area of, okay, cool, there's still orders in these areas. It's kind of the fundamental of a gap. Maybe I'm wrong. Obviously, if you have a different definition, which is better than what I've given, please do provide it. My definition might be absolutely pathetic because I haven't really, given a teacher's definition of a gap. But it's kind of the idea there anyway. So bearing that in mind, we have 79 to 86. Very wide range, I know. For me, again, I'm going to cut out 78. What we also have with this range is the consistent downtrend we've had. Now, we've drawn these ranges high to low, equilibrium, obviously even higher towards equilibrium. What do we have? I drew this on Monday. I'm going to draw it again. High to low until we stop. Is this a reason to stop? Do I think where we are now, and this is why I was saying on the 1 hour, even though we haven't printed higher, what period are we going to be most likely to stop? We go down until proven otherwise. we've hit into this massive monthly support, which we used on and off pretty consistently during that whole period in 2024. Now, I'm not saying, on the 1 hour, we have a monthly support on the 1 hour. It doesn't translate, but weekly to monthly can translate pretty well. And we've obviously come into this area about 60k and just hit a wall. We obviously have this low at 59, this area here. And obviously we've been using these ranges for the extension line up here. We've already talked about this quite a while ago. We have the low here of this range here, obviously the equilibrium at 89k. So the idea of a downtrend, again, we have the high to equilibrium, support equilibrium, came down to low, come up towards equilibrium area, come down towards, extension, you know what I mean? So it's like, it's been a good process, it's the same as here. We were at the low, we printed higher than the low past extension, came to the extension, came up right past equilibrium, found support equilibrium, stopped to be fair, did kind of come out to the wider range of this area, but eventually came up to the high, come to the extension, and now we reversed, obviously, rejection blocks from the 116k area coming down towards equilibrium. Very similar to how we did over here, where we printed right through it. Printed to the very bottom of this equilibrium, found resistance a few times. Obviously, as we go into some more detail, we can see we came towards 98k for this resistance, and obviously come down to the low again. So it's kind of the balance in between this low and this high, obviously this midpoint. So we kind of the bounce, to the low, bounce to the midpoint, bounce to the high, bounce to the midpoint, bounce to the low. So it's kind of just like juggling or whatnot. And this looks like a child's drawing, I know. Let's just get rid of it all. But kind of the balance between these multitude of areas. So same concept here, where we have, okay, cool. We've come from the low, we come back to support, we try and find that support, we test as resistance, we don't use as resistance, we go up, these sorts of things. So same idea here, we do have this weekly rejection block, which is valid. We are at this long time from support point. I do believe we need a rebalance back up towards, at least above 79.6 towards this, and obviously, in my opinion, 80,624. If we go down, obviously, to the 1 hour and whatnot, I think we need to get past above a lot of these areas, kind of consistent areas here, 79.4 and whatnot. Mainly, obviously, into as we go from the weekly to the daily, we'll see the gaps in more detail, which is obviously 81 to 79, and then we have this smaller one to 86. Now, importantly as well, we have on the daily, as we've looked at from high to low, come past equilibrium, high to low, we have the same idea here, which equilibrium is above 78k. So anything goes above 78k, 80k, as low as 80k, 86k. Do I think it can go to 80? I mean, for me personally, we have 83, the outer range of the equilibrium. We are within where we need to be in for this this kind of block between the low and the high. We are in this weekly gap very, very strongly, about the midpoint at 83 as well. So we have a lot within at least above 80,800, about 81k. I do think we might need a rebalance, and by the time we hit 81k, we've just come from a major low at 60k. So we've had a major, even though you might think 81, 83k, whatever it may be exactly, as we look at it as we go into the weeks, might not be, oh wow, that's not very high, 83k. We would be coming from 60k. You know what I mean? And maybe this is obviously maybe this is some magical flush, and this low actually doesn't matter, and we're going to go back up to 130k. But you might think, I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Not financial advice. But looking at the move past this low, we've not gotten any more positive. In this latest weekly print, this is still consistently being negative. We've just because we've come to 60k, we've gone back up towards 72, and we're going to pump towards 83. It doesn't mean we've got any more positive. We've still printed past a major low we produced on 17th of November, and obviously printing past this, printing a lower high and printing lower. We've printed past that at 80,620. We've printed past a major low at 74.5. We've consistently done lower and lower, and we haven't slowed down. Considering the move we had from the high to low, this move, 38%. The high to low we've had over here, 35%. Do you know what I mean? So, maybe I'm not measuring this as good, but this move we had was worse. It's been worse in terms of the gross from the high to low, not the where we've printed, not what we've done, the gross high to low. Maybe I'm not using the right words there. But the gross high to low, it's been worse. than the previous move where we failed to print past the expansion line at 124. We can see we whipped past it 125, printing at 124, failed to, and that's the system of expanding to a new range or contracting below a range, is these expansion lines. It's printing past this. So as soon as we printed past this, it's free game. You know what I mean? Fair value gap range here at 49, came into it, pumped. Obviously, whole fight there. You can see this is the failure point, obviously based on the ranges. I've had different reasons for the failure point. Again, we had a high, we had a fail to print twice. We did actually fail to print past the high twice now, and obviously finally print past the low. So we had, outside of looking at these ranges, we have reason to, and I've been talking about this, we had a reason to not go up. Again, we had that move upwards. We failed to print past the high. We printed past the low of this green candle. This is now order block of resistance after coming past the point of interest at 124. We came back up into it here, 116, and then we dumped. So we have reason. We had plenty of reason. So from there, we've dumped. So again, like I said, the balance between the highs and lows. So do I think we're going to go to 28k? I don't know what Mike's been saying, to be fair, but you know what I mean? It's like, I think he's been very negative, and, we've been very negative. He's got fair right to be. Do I think we'll print past, because, okay, if we dump again within this downtrend, which is, we could do, what do we have? Let's go to the monthly. So we have a major low at 49, for example. That could be something interesting. Do I think any lower? Again, I don't think so. So if we were to print past 52k, coming towards 49, let's say, that is bad, very, very bad. It's really, really bad. That's pretty much all I've got to say for that, because what that would mean is if we print past this, we are now within this range from here to 0, basically. So the midline would be 29k. Obviously, we've kind of used this area before. We came to the high, came to midpoint, tried to print past the extension line. What do we see here? What do we see? We can see this line for the low. We see this is the extension line, the one after this. We can see we printed at it, but we failed to get past it. We know that's a very, very bad sign. So what that means is we came down. Obviously, we then came right through equilibrium, and then obviously we used the resistance. Obviously, comes to some of these lines here. Tried to get above, fail, gets to the gap, came to equilibrium again, another gap, came higher, failed to print, but obviously came with that one more time into this gap again. Here came up one more time, finally printing past equilibrium. So we have these processes, whatever. However we process it, we did it. But importantly, we didn't print past that extension. So same story here. We could come as low as 52k. That's fine, because that's the midpoint of this major gap. That's fine. Or this support point. That's fine. As long as we don't print past it. Because that's the failure point in these ranges. Now, these ranges might be wrong. This is not financial advice. I'm not a professional. Okay. But, it's just a theory. But not to theory craft too much in terms of the future of Bitcoin. Talking about what we have right now, which is we have this rejection block coming from this low. We have just come to a monthly support point, which could be a good point of interest. We have things on the 1 hour, which are supports. We could be trying to get back above on the 1 hour now. I do want a bit of retracement back up before we go down on the weekly and on the daily, because again, the daily, it goes down until proven otherwise. We just came to a support point. We have that high to the low coming above, basically 79k. We have some of these triple highs here at 79.5. We have the small gap at 81k. So like I said, 81 to 83. We have this 832 line here, which again is the start of this equilibrium, which you can see we've came within support and whatnot, but mainly at least above 80,600. So 81k. Basically, that's my goal for Bitcoin. I do want to see a retracement. I do want to see us use this expansion for rejection block. I do want to see us use its support, whether that be at the high at 70 or 65k for this 1 hour low, which we have over here. Whether we use this support and we print through this, whatever we may do, I do want to see an expansion back upwards. So that's kind of it for Bitcoin. I know I've given a lot. Let me read the chat before I move on, because I've spent a long time. I always do this, though. I do the intro, obviously 6 minutes, whatever it may be, and then we spend like 25 minutes, 30 minutes on Bitcoin, and then I just kind of breeze through everything else, and then we end. That's just how it works. Let me have some water, okay? Because clean equal highs sat around 80k above the internal range high. Yeah. I mean, yes. I mean, obviously we've got there's plenty there's obviously whether it be the gaps, whether it be 80k. I know what you mean. If it being there, yes. Obviously, the thing in terms of the internal range, which I believe terminology-wise sounds similar to the idea of the range for me anyway. In terms of internal to external being the lows, internal being gaps and highs. Obviously, the idea of a downtrend, external to internal, all that sort of stuff. But I mean, yeah, I think I would imagine it'd be similar to the same idea, which is, high to low. And maybe not the equilibrium, equilibrium might not be the same thing you use, but in terms of those highs to this gap, yeah, within 79 to 81k. I mean, again, anything above number one, 79k being that equilibrium, and I think within 80,064, whether it be the exact low, I think 81k, 80,600 at least is kind of my kind of first hit. If we get into this area, obviously lower time frame, watching reversal, all this sort of stuff. Higher, I do believe so, yes. And obviously, you were saying you believe so as well, which is good news. Screen's off. Oh, does it? What does the chart go off when I alt tab? Ah, damn. I'll try not to alt tab then. I was just running into the external range to fill the inefficiencies. Well, in terms of what we've done now, in terms of on the outside, in terms of like we have obviously the trend in terms of everything on the right hand side being internal, everything on the outside being external, is what I believe you mean maybe. So in terms of potentially. Yeah, I mean, I do think regardless of the highs there at 79, which is basically the same area as that 80k, 81k, I think in obviously what I've looked at, I do think we want to see higher. I do want to see us come up into this area. Like I said though, on the weekly we've printed we're worse. We're probably more negative than we've ever been. Because even in this downtrend, and yes, okay, we printed past this low here at 107, which was a very bad sign. We went past it a few times, printed, that was negative, obviously. But in terms of what we had and what we've been doing, this is equally, if not slightly worse, negative than this previous move. Because again, we saw the percentage move we've had from the high to the low was worse than the initial move. The printing past significant lows, we had some internal, these lows here. Oh, these are all external technically. On a downtrend, everything on the left is all external. Everything within gaps and highs is internal. That's the balance between external and internal. But, in terms of within this move, yes, we did have, technically this is a major low. But in terms of from a significant low to a significant high, being these two lows, we have printed past this major low, which is a very bad sign. We are very negative. We're very negative. I think it'll get a bit worse. My hope is, which is, because again, how many times on this chart have we printed at the extension line, failed to print extension line, and moved the opposite way? A few times. Extension, printed, didn't print through it, reverse. Print up, printed through extension, failed to print past this extension, pump. Came up, failed to print through this extension, dump. Come down, print at extension, pump. It's cinema. It's cinema. That's it. I've called it in. I've priced it in. I know. I am in with them. I am in with. I am. Let's move on. I was gonna joke, and I couldn't bother. Excuse me. Have I changed my chart on this? I haven't. Where's everything on Ethereum? Not that. I don't want to look at that. Where's everything? Have I not drawn anything? Maybe I haven't. Goodness gracious. Anyways, I guess I'll just look at the pricing. So this is like the relative low of what we have with Bitcoin in terms of the 1 hour-ish, kind of a bit wider than the 1 hour-ish. But you can see it's not great for Ethereum. I want to do a bit lower. You can see a bit more detail. Here we go. Let's do the 4 hour. It's a bit less. Actually, let's figure out on the weekly. I kind of want to go weekly. I haven't actually looked at this. That's not the right one. There we go. haven't really looked at Ethereum relative to Bitcoin too much in terms of the ranges and what and support and whatnot. I remember talking on Monday about what we had within this. Do I seriously not have anything drawn? Did I delete everything? I hid everything. Wait. I hid everything, didn't I? I hid everything so I could see it. Okay, let's keep it hidden. Let's just do it fresh. Same story here. We have the same ranges. Again, this isn't a support or a resistance area or anything of the sort. This is a range I at least want to come into the low at 2640. We have the gap there. We are obviously going to have the same story on the daily. Again, everything's kind of moving unanimously. We have obviously range high to range low. We have the high. We're going to have the high to the low. We have something above 260. We have the low at 2620. We have the gap 2651. Same thing there. We have obviously the equilibrium, which we fought at. We had support at the high end, obviously kind of bouncing within this area. We never really got higher than, relative to Bitcoin, we would have got to about 37. Because this was the same gap. This is what we drew, actually, to be fair. Because on Bitcoin, if you remember, we kind of fought at equilibrium, expanded higher towards the high end of the range, and then we got to this 98k gap, and then we dumped. Ethereum, we didn't do that. We just continued to use this kind of midline as an area here. It was mainly this gap, to be fair, was the difficult line. Nonetheless, though, continued downwards, kind of printing lower than this line. Actually printing through this low, which obviously we used previously. We kind of came, because again, this is the wider range of the equilibrium. Came to the low, obviously fighting at it, printed through it finally, coming down to the next lines downwards. Obviously, this is more of a weekly range, which we're looking at here. A bit of a tighter range. Let's go to 2187 to go a bit lower down so we can actually see what we're doing. So again, we still have the same equilibrium lines. We still have the same kind of story, but we can just see the actual highs and lows on the lower time frames. So let's go to the 4 hour. You know what? No, the daily was actually fine. Daily gives it enough juice. So you can see this one. We've actually printed through this main line here. So it's kind of the second line out. You know, it's this second line out. So we've printed through that pretty badly. So Bitcoin, you know, it has 52k for that. For the low, for coming towards the extension line. Ethereum's already within this area now. It depends on how we do, because again, we've printed through this extension, so we are within this range. You can see we've kind of come upwards. We've kind of come within here, and you can see we're not reversed. We haven't fully slowed down. Let's go to 4 hour actually. You know what? 1 hour. Here we go. So you can see it. No, 4 hour. There we go. So we can see, you know, we kind of came into it, kind of tried to use support, reversed, continued to use resistance, printed through it. Not a great sign. And we kind of come up now to this top end of it, or the lowest end of the whole range, and now we've kind of had a move away from it. So we've printed through that extension line, and we've come to that top end and used it as resistance. So we have kind of officially come into this range now. So from here, we can now start to use some of these ranges. So obviously, like order blocks, for example. So what's that going to be in terms of an order block? Well, we have this last move upwards, coming above some of these highs, and then we reverse through it. So we can kind of look at somewhat of a range like this, for example. So if we make this black so we can see it and expand that opacity. So we can see, you know, again, order block area. We have the last up close. Through some of these highs, for example, before we print through it there with this down close, we can see, you know, trying to get through it. We didn't quite print through it there, but we still used it nonetheless as resistance. Obviously on the 1 hour, we can draw it a bit higher for this last up close here. You can see we finally printed through it, resistance, you know, continuing down, all these sorts of things. But I'm going to do it on the 4 hour because I want to look at the 4 hour here. So we can see it being used there perfectly fine. And obviously coming back up into it now. So we're kind of slowly producing these areas of somewhat resistance support. Just want to draw this area out quickly. There we go. So we kind of have that balanced price range here, which we've produced with this gap and this gap here. You can see we used it once there, we used it again here. So we're kind of within this resistance and support area so far right now with Ethereum. But I have more of a bias negative longer term anyway, because we have printed for that extension line. Now, my important thing here is there's a there's a theory I have with this, which is going to be we do retrace up towards that 2,600 area, at least towards that low. We have these daily gaps and whatnot within 2,639 and whatnot into that low. We can do this where we come up into this extension line, print at 2,423 and wick up towards 2,616 and have a faster move, which allows us to continue to use this resistance and continue to go downwards and still stay in this lower range here. So yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking for this, because we can do all these moves at the same time and still be within this lower range. You know, kind of we have this kind of down move into this range, we kind of come upwards, and obviously we come up towards that 264 range, whatever, but we print at this line here, and it allows us to continue lower, which again, the next point of interest on just a wide range is obviously the equilibrium down here. Now, this is a ridiculously negative value down here. You know, this is a very ridiculous negative. And obviously, we can go one range lower to look at 1 hour. You know, this is the relative range to the 1 hour. You know, so this is... So we can see the equilibriums there. Like, it's all relative scaled. It's all relatively scaled. So like I said, Bitcoin has 19683 for the 1 hour. So this is more appropriate on the 1 hour, which is why I was looking at the 4 hour, because it's a bit of a in-between area. But that range we had is going to be a lot wider. But we can still see we have some lows, we have some areas on this range at about 1,450. So this is obviously relative to the 1 hour, so it's we're gonna have to look at the 1 hour time frame or the 4 hour time frame relative to this time frame for it to be a bit more appropriate. So we can see if the same sort of arguments within the same area. So for example, we had this up close to then get printed through within this range, the order block area here. So this low being consistently used. We printed through it, midpoint, low here, came down to equilibrium, came up one more time, resistance a bit here, but mainly this area here as resistance for that low, and then we've come down one more time to a previous area of support. Obviously in this case, as we can see, we actually have liquidity void rather than gaps. So let me draw that out in terms of the last... Is that... why is it red? I've got this filter. Okay, I'm going to assume this is... I'm going to assume that's positive. So that's going to be this. There we go. So that's now more of a liquidity void rather than a gap, which then we can see is going to be, midpoint there. So we can see, I can see a bit there. We came to the low of it, midpoint, print it through, come down. So we kind of using this area as a support resistance area. Okay, let me delete this before deleting everything else. There we go. Okay. Let me just clear it all out so we can see it a bit better. There we go. So yes, we kind of have that on the 1 hour. So in terms of support, we obviously have this at 1821, which is kind of similar to how we have with Bitcoin. We've already seen towards 60k, but we have that 52k longer term. I've just expanded that out. I don't want to do that. I don't know if that's still on the screen. No, okay, good. I've just done it again. There we go. Okay. I want to go to the data here so we can actually see it in a bit more detail. So let's just go back to the wider range and see it. Okay, cool. Yeah, so we still have these areas. Let's go to the weekly actually, so you can see it a bit better. So what we had with Bitcoin, we looked at the weekly in terms of to kind of orchestrate what we had going across kind of the whole board. I mean, kind of see this is a relative weak time frame. We should go one range higher, but I'm not for now because what do we have with Ethereum? Well, relative to what we have with Bitcoin, we have that print through a considerable low, which is this 2110 area. Obviously, we had this previous gap, which we kind of, whatever, do nothing at. And then we have these major lows. Now, in terms of what Bitcoin has, we don't really have a major low. We just have the next kind of rung down, which is about 52k. Relative to what we have with Ethereum, I think the 1400 this 1k area is a bit more of a deeper cut area, which might be a bit too much. But we have midpoints and we have lines. For example, I've done this before. I think maybe 2 streams ago, where we consistently can look at each line as its own support resistance area. So we have previous 2300, we have 1900, we have 1500. So there's these kind of rungs down, which we could also respect as an area as well. So I do believe Ethereum is going to have the same. I think the market as a whole is going to have the same kind of response to what we've done so far, which is going to be that retracement back up towards these major gaps on the weekly. We're going to have I think across the board, considering what we've done and all the liquidations we've had on the way downwards, I think we're going to have a recovery back upwards. For me, my limit at least is going to be 2630. Into this low within this gap. It's the same thing. We have Bitcoin at 80,640, which comes up to about 81k. I'm going to go to Solana. I'm probably going to have the same thing. But from there, it's kind of, instead of just like, okay, cool, we have the retracement towards 2600 or 2650. My next thing is like, okay, cool, where's the next low going to be? So it's going to be, are we going to come past this low and print, which is, likelihood if we're going to continue to do a downtrend. Printing past this low, we have support at 1500. We have the next rung down at 1126, which is the low, or I think the low, the equilibrium of the other range. So it's kind of in cahoots with each other, if you will. So there's validity for that low. Again, a very extreme low, but there are some extreme prices for Bitcoin. But in terms of what Bitcoin has at 52k, I think relative, again, Ethereum has been consistently moving lower faster than Bitcoin, and so has Solana. So I think relatively, 1200 is probably an appropriate area relative to about 50k for Bitcoin. So I do think we have these sorts of targets on the way downwards if we continue what we're doing. Obviously, if we continue what we're doing. Let me move to Solana though, and then we can have a glance at, because Syrup I know is going to be 2 minutes. I'm going to go, okay, cool, we're doing what I said we're going to do. We're going to continue downwards, sorted. So yeah, let's just go to Solana, get this done, and then yeah. So what do we have? I'm going to be probably on this range, maybe a bit higher. Okay, this is pretty good actually. On the weekly, we probably want to go higher. I should probably be doing the math of this, but I'm not, because I'm just going to eyeball it, because I'm on stream and I haven't drawn any of these in these areas about. So we have this previous rejection block. I think I remember looking at this last stream actually, or that area being anyways. The main topic, I think also last stream, was within these areas here. We had this mid area of the order block. We then had this area. I think I must have had the other range. That's not what I wanted to click. What have I just clicked? I've definitely clicked the wrong thing. Okay, whatever. Let's just leave it at this range. It just broke on me. I don't know what happened there. Let's just leave that like this. So I think we have a void area in another range to be drawn. So that's obviously highlighted there. Importantly, well, this is the daily, similar to how we have Bitcoin and whatnot. I think with Solana's case, sorry, in terms of the retracement we've had, we've not really had many retracements. Again, Solana's been probably relative as well to the weekly, is more negative than anything, because we still failed to print that new high. Again, Bitcoin easily did all-time highs. Ethereum did all-time highs and printed, importantly. Solana didn't do that. We had this high, we didn't print. And again, same thing I said with Bitcoin. We tried to get above that area at 268. We didn't. This is the extension line. You get to it, you fail to print past it. It's not good. And then where do we go to? We came to equilibrium. So same story we've had with every other coin. We did actually come back up one more time to the high, because we did actually use this as a support area. We came upwards. We've come back down to equilibrium. Found resistance. We found resistance within equilibrium, and then we've come down past it. So again, same idea. Not saying we go to zero. Okay, not saying we go to zero, but kind of this is the range for the entirety of Solana. So, because obviously we can see we go from 0 to 243. If we wanted more of a new low, we would have to go to the AE1. We would have to look at a closer range, which we can see. Would have to go to the daily, for example, to look at it in a bit more detail to find. Once it loads, okay, it's broken on Solana. I just have to turn this off, maybe. Okay, it's broken on a daily here. Let's see what it. There we go. Let's go to 4 hours, see if it redraws. Okay, I don't know why it's breaking. If we go to the weekly, it draws perfectly fine. So we're just going to have to look at it on the weekly, I guess, which is rough. But we can see, obviously, we have these lows, but then we have more periods on the way up and down, which we can see we have used previously. which we can pay attention to. Same as we've seen with Bitcoin, same as we've seen with Ethereum, where we have these equilibriums, you know, support, resistance, and whatnot. Obviously, support one more time, resistance, came up, resistance, obviously printed through it, eventually expanded away from this whole area. See, easy print through the extension line, actually use it as support area here, and this is the story I'm getting onto, why I have this rejection block actually drawn, because we have the high printed through the extension line here. We actually came back to it and then had this rejection block coming into this gap, then before we continue to print higher past equilibrium and whatnot, and then eventually use this area as support. Again, this is the weekly looking at a lower time frame range, so it's not going to be very good to look at, but we can still use it nonetheless. So we can still have this area at 85, which we can see has been an area we've tried to use decently. Again, the range is just gone for me. I'm just going to have to draw a newer range here, which is rough. So we can see we did kind of, again, going from the weekly support to a 4 hour isn't the greatest strength in the world. We could probably look a bit more on daily. We've tried to use the support, not the smoothest support, I will not lie, but we are at a point of support nonetheless. Now, I do believe across the market we will expect to see this sort of retracement and whatnot. In terms of that high to the low, if we were to see this, it's going to be something above 108. Again, looking at that low to the high of this range before printing lower, it's going to be about 116. So I do want to see it coming into this range. You know, again, we have previous support, which will now be resistance all the way as low as 106. We have this range of gaps, mainly looking at probably a gap, which is going to be about 120, 119. We obviously do have this lower gap here. So relative to Ethereum and Bitcoin, which have lower gaps being valid, Solana has this high gap. I mean, both coins have these lower and higher gaps. I'm just going to delete that line. I can't bother to keep it. I'm just going to draw this range here. There we go. So yeah, so we'll have this area at 119. Obviously, we have the whole equilibrium. We have that low at 117. So I do want to see Solana come up towards these 112 to 118 areas, towards the resistances. And then from there, again, it's going to be, instead of where we're going to get to on the high, I do believe we'll get to all these prices I've talked about on Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana. It's then going to be where we're going to hit on the lower end. You know, where's the support? So we have 55, for example. We're going to have 55 as a support. You know, we've kind of seen it once before. I suppose on the daily time frame, we kind of saw it come up and use it as resistance, gap as support, came up printed, support, support. This is an order block, though, to be fair. Use it as resistance there, came lower than it, came back into this gap, came up, support again, came up, finally printed past this high, reversed this as resistance, use it support here in this low, came up. So we have we had a little fight over here, for example, where we used this area quite consistently, about $56. I wish I could go to the lower time frame and use that range. I don't know why it's broken. I'm gonna have to draw it out myself and do the math of it to find the range, but I'm not gonna do that live. I've only got 3 minutes. I'm gonna leave in 4 because I have to leave to get a lamp. So yeah, so that's kind of it. Solana again, 116 in terms of a low, 54, 56, towards the $50 range. And yeah, that's kind of it. Again, in terms of what else we have, in terms of entering into this void, for example, it gets to about $51. Actually, no, the void's probably either within. Actually, this isn't a void at all. It's going to be this mass of expansion upwards. The void's going to be between the 2 down close opens and closes here, which is going to be this whole range here. You can see this expansion enters into the range here, so we're going to draw it out. High end of it about $51. Again, it's very, very low. There we go. So again, the high end of that is about $51. So, you know, I wish I could draw this. I don't think the 79 is going to be any sort of valid here, because this is like the monthly stuff. Because you find your range, you go up one, you go down one. That's what you want to look at. But you can see again, even in this void, we have that midpoint at 40, or that equilibrium about 40 to 47, sitting about there. And apart from that, that's pretty much it. We are coming towards this low. I wish I can go to the 4 hour to look at this, but I can't. We fought at extension. I don't know if we printed through it on the lower time frames relative to this range, but you know, in terms of the lows, we still have this $81 range, which is obviously where we draw this expansion from, which we're kind of sitting at. It's not going to draw out. Yeah. So you know what? No, I've got 1 minute. I'm just going to have to look at the monthly or the weekly and just believe it there. We have that 81. Finalizing the prices 116-ish to 112 for Solana, and then we have $52, for example, as in next low. Or in terms of this range, which I would love to look at, we have 63, for example, we have 52, we have 57, we have some of these lines. We can see, for example, this one here at 57, and at both. So you can see kind of a fight between, this line at 62 and here. We saw the usage of support around 52 as well. Also having this gap here anyways, which obviously helps. Obviously coming up to the high, printing through this extension, which would be a lot easier to look at if I was on the 4 hour. But anyways, we could probably see the print kind of a fight here, finally printing through the extension, using a support, whatever. Okay. Nonetheless, moving on to syrup quickly to finalize. Let me just hide it for syrup because I don't want to look at it because I've already got my own system anyways, because I've got 1 minute. I have to go collect a lamp. So I've been drawing these. We have this range in terms of what we have printed. We have this gap here at 23. We're only just about entering into this gap here. We haven't done anything too positive. Again, we have wick past this low, or we've actually done equal lows here, which is going to be super, super tasty. Yeah, I think it's probably the word I can use, I suppose. It will be good to come past 23.6. We've not reversed. I think Mike's has had 27 cents as a low. I do think a bit lower. We have come to 23.6. I do think a bit lower. 21 cent, at least below 23.1. At least. We obviously have these weekly equal lows. Come on. You know what I mean? We've also printed past this weekly gap here, which could be interesting to focus on as a good sign that we're continuing downwards. Printing through gaps, for example. You can see we tried to use it on the daily, came to this gap on the daily here, printed through it. We've now come back up, and we're kind of using this top end here. We also have this little gap here, but we have this weekly inverse gap here. So we kind of have resistance here. What do we have? We also have these two candle body up close into a resistance to get kept printed through. So we also have these highs here as resistance. So maybe we could go higher towards 30 cents as a resistance, but I do think we are consistently coming downwards. We haven't done anything in my book, which actually, well, the range on the dailies here, actually, to be fair. So we could go a bit higher. Obviously, it starts there. So you can see, obviously, we used that, but previously used it again, printed, didn't quite print it through it there. Still found resistance, eventually printed through it, nonetheless. We haven't done anything which suggests to me that 27 cent would have been a support point, which will reverse that. We haven't done anything right now which we're reversing. We're still consistently going through lows and printing lower and lower. We've just done equal lows at a support point. This is a order block and a gap at the same time, which is quite strong support at about 22 cent. Like I said, I think we're going to target for these lows. I think we're going to find resistance in this area. We have this previous inverse gap. We have a order block here. We're going to see resistance. We're probably going to come down to 22 cents. Again, considering what we're doing in the market, Bitcoin coming up to 81k, Ethereum 2650, Solana 116, 112, 120, Syrup, 30 cent, 30 and a half cent, back down to 22. I think we're kind of all consistently doing the same thing. Again, Bitcoin 52-ish K, whatever, Solana 53, Ethereum 1400. Obviously, it's got some prices at 1500. Maple or Syrup, I should say, 22. That's just what I've had. I've had 22 for ages. Nothing's changed. I've not switched up on the chart or anything. This is my one chart. Okay, this is my one chart I hold in my heart, which I've been wanting this to happen since the reversal back here. I've just wanted it to come down. Just waiting. So yeah, finally it's playing out and getting there. So nonetheless, I've just realised my sidebar is on the screen. I like to keep it neat, There we go. Let me time it more. Okay, so that's it though. I do need to go. It's 6:03. I'm late. I need to go collect a lamp. Thank you all of you for joining the stream. Obviously, I need to go. I need to go pizza. Yeah, okay. Everyone needs to leave. Don't worry. I'm not keeping you guys any longer. Thank you all of you for watching the stream. Appreciate you all joining me today. Obviously, it's not exciting times for people, but I'm hopeful for the outcome. I mean, I think it depends on what you trade. If you're a buy and hold person, this is obviously just it depends on obviously how long you hold them for. But this is just ebbs and flows of the market. In terms of if you're someone who would want to trade both sides of the coin, in terms of longing and shorting, trading futures is the actual word for it. Then obviously you want to know what's going on. I feel comfortable knowing. I feel comfortable in what I've talked about, in feeling like this sounds good. Obviously, there's times I've talked about the charts and I feel like I've had a good assumption of what's going on, and it's been wrong. Again, this is not financial advice. People get things right, people get things wrong, so just bear that in mind. But I feel like I've got a good grasp on what I could see going on. I think this has gone pretty good so far, especially with these ranges, which I took them off ages ago because I just didn't want them on. It was just messy, but desperate times call for desperate measures, and this is what I think. So thank you so much. I do need to get this lamp. It is obviously Monday. Wednesday, I don't know if we have a quiz, but obviously we do have we obviously have everyone on Barton Square playing as well. So thank you, obviously, everyone's YouTube. Thank you, everyone on Barton Square, for watching. Appreciate you all for being here. And I will see you on Wednesday if we have everything. If not, I'll see you Thursday. And that's about it. I think we've done a great In the Trenches with Wolf Swap, so if you want to go watch that, that's good. We have people clipping that actually from Wolf Swap marketing people, so that's pretty cool. I'm in talks with trying to arrange another one, so you might see that soon on the channel. But if not, if you like Wolf Swap and you want to watch Alex, especially talk about the future of Wolf Swap and obviously pack movements and all that sort of things, do go watch In the Trenches. I think it was a pretty good conversation. So other than that, thank you so much, everybody. Thank you. I do want to get contact KB. I know I've said this last time. I know it's horrible. I'm a horrible streamer, horrible arranger. But I think maybe now actually could be. I keep on saying this, but now obviously the turmoils in the market could be a good time to have a talk. As Hidden Agenda, did Hidden Agenda talk about it? I think we might talk about it. Mike talked about it, yes. Can arrange some time soon. So again, I will message you. I will make a new UI, giving it a new refresh from last time, and get in contact. So hopefully that'll be good if you're up for that. Yes, yes, perfect. Thank you. I'll get in touch for sure. But other than that, thank you. See you guys Thursday. I don't think we're doing it Wednesday. I don't know. We might be. I don't know. I can't say for certain. Because obviously sometimes we do Maple, sometimes or sometimes we have people to do something we don't. So, anyways, thank you. I do need to go. Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Danny, as well. I did see Danny join. See you guys next time. Thank you. Goodbye.